Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me, please? Hello, if you can hear me, please, I will appreciate the response.
We can hear you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thompson Akpabio. I work for NECA. I'd like to say Happy New Year to everyone on this call. I acknowledge the presence of my DG, Mr. Dawale Smart Oyerunde. I acknowledge the presence of some of my council members that are on this call, my colleagues, and everybody joining this webinar today. This is officially our very first engagement as NECA this year, and we thank you very much for being a part of it. Today, we'll be talking about managing regulatory compliance. Today, we'll be talking about managing regulatory compliance. What is it? How has it affected business? What should we be looking at in terms of managing regulatory compliance? And we'll be sharing with us some thoughts. We've actually reached out to some seasoned faculties who will be sharing with us from their wealth of experience. And it is something that I can assure you, you will not get in any textbook, because they'll be talking from the heart, they'll be talking practically, so that the rest of us could learn. Why reinvent the wheel if it has already been done? And so that's what we'll be sharing with us today. We'll be having a couple of people still joining us on this call. And when it gets to a certain number, the others will also be joining us through the NECA YouTube, so that they'll also be part of this conversation. On that note, I'd like to welcome you again to this webinar on managing regulatory compliance. It's basically for the sustainability of businesses in this climate, because this will be and indeed a very interesting year for each and every one of us. I'd like my colleague to share the agenda so as to take us through in one clean sweep on what we'll be looking at, and everybody will be a part of it. While he's doing that, please, could we just have some ground rules? There'll be opportunity for us to ask questions. So what we'll be doing in this webinar is kindly indicate your name in the chat component of this facility. Indicate your name, indicate your organization, your email, or whatever details or contact details you have, so as to enable us to reach out to you. All the microphones will be automatically disabled, so that we do not disrupt flow and all of that. I said earlier, please enter in your name and your organization. For instance, Thompson Akpabio, NECA, then the email on the phone number. So please use the chat room for all your questions and your comments. It will be attended to. All your questions and your comments will be attended to. Please kindly indicate them in the chat room. We'll repeat these guidelines again, even as we continue this engagement. And in the event that you want to know what the agenda is like, we will hope to be through on or before 2:30 p.m. today. So we're going to have introduction of the speakers, and we're going to have the open remarks by the DG. We'll have the first, second, and the third section. Thereafter, we'll go into the questions and the answer component of this engagement. We'll be wrapping up with the announcements, which will be able to inform colleagues and everybody about the upcoming programs of NECA for this year, the L&D, and then, of course, my DG will be wrapping up the event. So in terms of the introduction of speaker, the welcome slides, and objective, and the profile, I'll be joining me in anchoring this is my colleague, Tobiloba Babarinde, and I would like to invite her to take us through the other aspect in terms of the profile. Toby, over to you, please. You are muted, Toby. Toby, you are muted.
Okay, so sorry. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Thompson. I'll be starting with the profile for Mr. Albert Folorenshaw. Albert Folorenshaw, a member of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, is a managing consultant at Creston Pedabo. Albert, FCA, FCTI, ACIB, ADIT, MSc, LLB Horns, is the managing consultant of the firm, which he co-founded, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, with over 29 years of professional experience in taxation, insolvency practice, and management consulting. He is also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN, an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, and a member of the Business Recovery and Insolvency Practitioners Association of Nigeria, BRIPAN. He is a member of both the Working and Tax Advisory Committee to the Tax Appeal Tribunal. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Ambrose Ali University, Epoma, and a Master of Science degree in Banking and Finance from the University of Ibadan. He also holds a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Essex, England. He has been a lecturer in tax management for the past 17 years at Wise Associates Limited, a leading accountancy tutor house. He also lectures business and advanced taxation in the same school for students preparing for the ACCA examinations. Having passed and been awarded the prestigious Advanced Diploma in International Taxation by the Chartered Institute of Taxation, CIOT of UK, with specialization in UK taxation and European taxation, is an international affiliate of the CIOT with wide-ranging experience in international taxation and advisory involving cross-border structuring and transfer pricing. He has been involved in all aspects of taxation practice, varying from international tax advisory, transfer pricing, planning and implementation, oil and gas taxation management, to name a few. He has also handled several insolvency assignments for financial institutions ranging from debt recovery, liquidation, and receivership management. Mr. Folorenshaw started his professional career as an accountant with the National Commission for Museums and Monuments in 1988 before joining the firm of Badminton Ashaya & Co. in 1992, where he gained experience spanning over 7 years as both the head of tax unit and the insolvency department. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the citation of Mr. Albert Folorenshaw, one of our speakers for today. Yes, then I'll be moving to the citation of Mr. Muyiwa Adebayo. Next slide, please. A distinguished figure in the world of finance, Mr. Adebayo Olumuyiwa, CFA, FRM, FCA, FICA, FCTI, MBA, Cumbria, a distinguished figure in the world of finance. Olumuyiwa Adebayo brings to the table a profound depth of knowledge in diverse finance domains, including financial reporting, risk management, taxation, and international financial standards. His academic achievements include a higher national diploma in business administration and management from the Yaba College of Technology, a bachelor's degree with honors in actuarial science from the University of Lagos, an MBA from the University of Cumbria, UK, a postgraduate advanced diploma in transfer pricing from Middlesex University, UK, and a postgraduate program in data science and business analytics from the University of Texas at Austin. Endowed with globally recognized credentials, Adebayo holds the prestigious CFA charter and is also a certified financial risk manager with the Global Association of Risk Professionals in the USA. Furthermore, he is a distinguished fellow of several esteemed Nigerian institutes, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, the Institute of Credit Administration, and the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Its international recognition extends to an advanced diploma in management accounting from the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, CIMA UK, and a diploma in international financial reporting from the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants, ACCA UK. Having spent several years honing his skills in the banking sector, Adebayo focused primarily on internal and financial controls function, including risk management. He then transitioned to Deloitte's IFRS advisory in Nigeria as a senior IFRS specialist expert and an IFRS technical and research fellow. His pivotal contributions to the team led to regulatory carve-out on tax implications and leverages for corporates for the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, between 2011 and 2012 during Nigeria's transition to the International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS. He is currently a lead facilitator of financial reporting at Wise Associates Limited, a prominent professional accounting and finance tuition provider in Nigeria and West Africa. In his current role as the group head of tax and financial controls at Sarah Group, a Nigerian energy conglomerate with international affluence, Adebayo is tasked with overseeing the group's task and financial control functions. He also serves as the chairman of the Committee of Finance Experts, COFE, as the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. In essence, Adebayo is a seasoned and accomplished finance professional, well-versed in an array of finance domains. Thank you. That is the profile of Mr. Adebayo Omewa. So next slide, please. So the next speaker is Oluwasoromidayo George. She is a top performing director of corporate affairs and sustainable business with extensive experience in sustainable business and development, ESG, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, CSR, corporate communications, external relations, policy advocacy, campaign planning and implementation. She has a proven track record of spearheading innovative initiatives and developing strategies to help reposition companies to maintain growth within a sustainable development framework. She is highly skilled in communicating with executive teams to outline overarching strategies, policies, procedures, and best practices. She's adept in evaluating operations within businesses to implement strategic process improvements. Oluwasoromidayo George is the Corporate Affairs and Sustainability Director, Coca-Cola HBC, Lagos, Nigeria, and the UN Global Compact Network Nigeria chairperson. She's also a co-chair of the CEO Water Mandates Council, representing the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and the chairman of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria Exports Group. Soromidayo was the first female corporate affairs and sustainable business director, Unilever, West and Central Africa, including Francophone Africa, the first female executive director of the British American Tobacco Nigeria Foundation, and the head of corporate affairs, British American Tobacco in West and Central Africa. She is the co-founder of the Corporate Social Responsibility and Governance Institute. In 2016, she set up the Heart of Ruth Fund, now the Heart of Ruth Foundation, to help rehabilitate women and children who are abused or economically disadvantaged. She is a DBA candidate at Walden University, researching bottom of the pyramid strategies in emerging markets. Soromidayo is a member of ISEC Nigeria, Board of Advisor, a fellow of the Wimborne Institute, a Wimb-based IE University, Madrid Executive Education Program for Women on Boards, and was a member of the Wimby's Executive Council. She was an adjunct member of the faculty at the School of Media and Communication, Pan-Atlantic University. She also sits on the Ministry of Environment Committee on Plastic Waste Management in Nigeria and on the board of the Nigerian Business Disability Network. Thank you. This is the citation for Mrs. Oluwasoromidayo George. Yeah, Mr. Thompson, over to you.
Thank you, Tony. We'd like to welcome all our faculties. From their profile, we can see a rich array of knowledge spanning decades, which will be shared with us today. But while looking at those people that have kindly entered their names, organizations in the chat room in terms of attendance, I see that there are some people that are not yet members of NECA. So who is NECA? What do they do? And why should you know about NECA? I'd like to invite my colleague, Adenike Adebayo Ajala, Mrs., to just speak to us on NECA briefly. Nike, please, you have the floor. Nike, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you, something. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes, I can. Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the first official forum of the year. I'll be sharing in just a few slides who we are as Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, what we do, and the benefits of joining to members. So my slides will basically comprise of, as I mentioned earlier, who we are, what we do, how we operate, why your organization should join us, some of our recent milestones, and then to let you know how to join NECA and how to reach us after now. Now, for those of us who do not know who we are the umbrella organization for employers in the organized private sector of Nigeria. And we're formed in 1957 to provide a forum for government to consult with private sector employers on social, economic, and labor policy issues. At the time, government felt that they couldn't relate or engage with private sector members on an individual basis, and they were advised to form an association that would be their voice, that would represent them, that would say what they needed, their pain points on issues that would enable them run their businesses in a sustainable manner. So therefore, we provide a platform for private sector employers to interact not only with government, we also interact on your behalf with labor, with communities, and other relevant institutions within and outside Nigeria. We are not a trade union, but we are a dynamic and highly respected professional body registered under the Companies and Allied Matters Act. And so we are recognized both internationally and nationally as the voice of employers in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. And with that, we have over 4,500 direct and indirect members in our association. What we do basically comprises of promoting and safeguarding and defending the interests of businesses through all legitimate and legal means. We influence businesses and social economic policies that will enable enterprises sustain their operations and of course be competitive. We also offer guides and assistance and advice to businesses on all business-related issues. So we are not limited in any way. So if you have any issues in respect of industrial relations, human resources, taxation, legal issues, business development, and so on, you are free to please reach out to us and we are able to meet you at your need. We champion social, economic, and commercial issues affecting businesses, and we also provide access to comparative data on terms and conditions of employment to our members. And we are also very big on capacity building. So whether it is on anything managerial or any topic that you feel will enable your businesses operate profitably, productively, and competitively, we also have a trade learning and development department that provides tailor-made trainings to our members or businesses that operate in Nigeria. So why should your organization join us? One of the things that we are very big about is on advocacy. Letting governments know, letting communities know, letting those who impact on the businesses of our members know about issues that enable them work and operate in their various environments. So you may have seen our Director General meeting with government officials or on the media, talking about different issues that concern businesses and providing solutions that will enable businesses to thrive. We also provide a platform for our members to meet and operate in their environment. We provide a platform for them to be able to discuss businesses and, of course, provide opportunities for expansion. We are also big on ensuring business sustainability. And so we are there to offer advice on negotiations with unions, any advice on taxation, or any advice that has to do with regulatory matters. We represent NECA on several boards, and I will also be mentioning that later in my slides. We are very big on collaborations and partnerships because we believe we don't know it all. And so we are willing to collaborate with other associations that have mandates that ensure business sustainability and competitiveness. And of course, we are also able to sit with those members or businesses that have unions and offer them advice on mediation and conciliation issues. And then, of course, in the area of enterprise protectiveness, we are always there for our members. We have a secretariat that is based in Lagos, but we operate in different geographical zones in Nigeria. We have an office in Port Harcourt, in Ibadan, in Abuja, and in Enugu that services the Southeast. We also have a platform in Kaduna, Kano, Plateau, and Osun states. We also operate through different sectors. So I'm sure many of you may be registered at sectorial levels with some of the associations you can see on my screen. And so they are able to relate with us, engage with us on issues that concern different sectors, and we call them affiliates. And that is why we are able to offer our members a rich database of information, rich database of advice to ensure that they are able to meet their requirements by law and address those knotty issues that may affect their business operations. I have mentioned earlier that outside NECA, we are recognized as the voice of business. So outside Nigeria, we are recognized by the International Labour Organization, the International Organization of Employers, Business Africa, and the Federation of West African Employers. All these organizations recognize NECA as the authentic voice of business. We also engage with government, not only directly, we are recognized by law and so therefore we are able to sit on several boards that interact with businesses at one time or the other. So you will find us on the Governing Council of the National Pension Commission, Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, Industrial Training Fund, and you can see the rich array of boards that NECA represents employers on. And for that, by that, we're able to bring your issues to the table and then use our influence to address those challenges that members have. Some of our milestones that we have been able to record over the year is the influence that we have had through our advocacy efforts. For instance, the inauguration of the Presidential Fiscal and Monetary Reforms Committee, the reversal of the Forex ban on 43 items that was hitherto banned by previous government, the suspension of implementation of the Finance Act, the reversal of the 7.5% VAT on diesel. The advocacy that we led was very effective to ensure the inability for governments to increase excise duty on carbonated and non-carbonated drinks, alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages, spirits, and tobacco. And so because of our advocacy efforts, we're able to ensure the reversal of that plan by government. We also partner with governments, agencies on several issues. For example, we have a Securities Issuers Forum by the Securities and Exchange Commission to address issues that concern publicly quoted companies. And even at state level, we are very, very active. We were able to, in Lagos State, see to the reversal of the astronomical increase in the use of the land use charge by the Lagos State government. We're able to, in Rivers State, challenge the Rivers State employment law on the floor of the Rivers State House of Assembly. We're able to advocate against the imposition of water and abstraction charges on businesses in Ogun State, leading to the reversal of very huge bills. And also, at the National Assembly, we're able to take them to court. If you recall, I mentioned that we protect our members through all legitimate and legal means. So currently at the Supreme Court, we are in court with the National Assembly on the interpretation of sectors 88 and 89 of the Constitution on the separation of powers. And I'm sure many companies at one time or the other may have been invited to the National Assembly to come by different committees to come and make presentations on one issue or the other. As an association, we are very active in ensuring that our members are not harassed or not and avoid being inundated with several invitations from the National Assembly. And so we have a very active legislative, observatory, and National Assembly observatories at the National and State Assembly. And we also continuously engage with the Federal Inland Revenue Service and Lagos Internal Revenue Service on tax issues, which serves as a restraint on replicating and imposing multiple taxes on our member companies. We all have a very active mediation desk that we have set up to resolve issues between member companies and several regulatory agencies, including the Industrial Training Fund, the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, and the National Pension Commissions are among some of the regulatory agencies that were able to intercede or intervene on behalf of members on issues that they may have challenges with. And we also champion the position of employers during the review of the labor and employment laws in the country. And right now we are on the Committee on the National Minimum Wage to represent employers to ensure that we are able to put forth the interest of employers in deciding on a new minimum wage for the country. We invite you to follow us via our social media handles on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And our website address is www.neca.org.ng. We are located in different geographical offices, but our headquarters is in Lagos at the NECA House, Akin Balogun Way, Central Business District, Alausa, Ikeja. And we are pleased to invite all non-members presently on this call to join NECA. And NECA is open to organizations that have a minimum of 5 staff, irrespective of size or sector. So you can pick up the NECA application form either through the website or through our different offices located in Nigeria. Our hotlines are listed, as I mentioned, in the slides. And want to use this opportunity to welcome you once again to this call and to ensure that and encourage us to have succinct discussions going forward. The presentation will be loaded in the chat box so that you can access it during the course of the meeting. Thank you very, very much. Over to you, Thompson.
Thank you, NECA. In the course of her presentation, she stated that NECA protects the interests of business through all legal and legitimate means. So if you are not yet a member of NECA, where would you be? We look forward to welcoming you to the NECA family. I would like at this point to invite my DG, Mr. Dewale Smaturende, DG NECA, for his welcome remarks. Mr. DG, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's
Good
afternoon
afternoon,
already,
sir.
and thank you for joining us once again on this very important session. As I've been said, our first webinar, the first one, the free one for 2024, and the topic or the theme is quite instructive for all of us, not only as NECA, but also for all businesses, all organized businesses, wherever you are operating from, whether in Nigeria, whether you are operating anywhere in Africa or anywhere in Asia. Regulation and regulators, they are all created to serve the same purpose, but sometimes in the operationalization of their role and within the context of the environment in which they find themselves or in which they were created, the interpretation of those rules sometimes differ. And for us in sub-Saharan Africa, go to anywhere, go to Kenya, go to go to Senegal, go to Ghana, the challenge that businesses face within the context of regulators and regulation remains the same. So we're taking this session with the very rich discussants or presenters that we have that have magnanimously decided or volunteered to share a perspective and their experience with us in this session. Whether you like it or not, you will, as a business, you will relate with regulators. There are over 100 regulators that you have to engage in this environment, both at the federal, state, and local government level. Regulators created to address different kind of business area, these different kind of operational areas in the business as a whole. We all have to relate with regulators at any point in time. At their best, according to the act that created or that creates most of these regulators, at their best, they can promote or they are created to promote business competitiveness, business sustainability, business competitiveness, enhance business environment so that the organized private sector not only is sustainable, but those businesses also remain competitive. And at their worst, you know, these regulators they can frustrate a business out of existence. In fact, they can be likened to undertakers, you know, at their worst case. And their tendency to either exhibit that positive trait of promoting business or their negative trait of frustrating the business out of existence can only be managed or contained or influenced by organizations like NECA and others like that that have the capacity to advocate and engage them constructively when they are going off the beat. Do we have options as businesses to regulators? Probably we don't have. They are necessary evils or necessary angels in whatever context that you want to look at it. Even if you operate in the black economy, you operate where you are not really visible. It's a matter of time because before regulation or regulators will catch up with such businesses. So our view basically is that we have to prepare member companies to understand the expectation of regulators and expectations of regulation from them, so that it positions them it positions them in such a way that they are prepared to address or they are prepared to engage those regulators constructively. You know, one of the many challenges we have faced at the Secretariat is when members have issues with regulators and they escalate those issues to the Secretariat. And while you are engaging the regulator, you realize that the member company has actually gone far beyond the normal in the context of breaching those regulations. So that reduces your capacity or your ability to engage and also cast a cloud on your integrity of engagement, because once they show you that, look, this member is not doing this, he has defaulted in it, he has breached this regulation, it becomes difficult for us to engage. And one of the key reasons is for us of this session is for us to shed light on so many issues that we need to take cognizance of, especially as we are starting 2024 as organized businesses. Regulators are going to be much more proactive now. A few days ago, there was a news item where a regulator slammed over 100 million naira on a member company because of certain issues that they felt the business as breached. Now, this might continue, and the onus is now on us as organized businesses to take a step back, look at our systems, look at our processes, and prepare ourselves in such a way that we will not be found wanting when regulators approach us for whatever issue. Now, once they are going beyond their risk index, they are going beyond the purview of the acts that sets them up, then member companies are free to approach NECA for us to provide that guidance and also protect your interests, as my colleagues have said. There's going to be a very incisive session, very important session. If need be, I think when my colleagues are sharing the information about the retreat for business managers, we'll also be escalating this topic in March, to take this topic again in March because of the fundamental nature of it. As I said, regulators can either promote your business, or alternatively, they can play the role of undertakers for any business that is not conscious or that is not proactive enough in the course of engagement. So I want to welcome you to this session. As I said, it's going to be incisive, it's going to be engaging, and feel free to drop your questions even in the chat box. And lastly, for me, will be for those that are not NECA members, you are operating an environment that is VUCA plus. It's not only volatile, it's not only unpredictable, it's not only complex, it's not only ambiguous. There are many other adjectives that you can use to describe the context of the environment in which businesses are operating here. And you'll be risking a lot if you are not covered by the association, if you are not covered by NECA as a member company. We have protected the interests of members at the National Assembly, protected the interests of members across board, even at the presidency, and our advocacy remains one of the most potent ways that we influence socioeconomic policies for the benefit of organized business. So my colleagues will share those information just before the end of this session, so that you can leverage on this opportunity to become a valued member of our association, the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. So thank you once again and welcome. Hope to see you again at the end of this session. If you have colleagues that are not on the call yet, please kindly send them the link so that they can quickly join as we start rolling immediately after that. Thank you very much, and do have a pleasant session. Thompson, over to you, back.
Thank you, Mr. DG. Thank you. We're going to the 3 sessions right away. All the faculties, they are co-hosts, so they'll be sharing their screen, their presentation, so they can maneuver as they wish. That will take us directly. If you have questions, like my DG rightly stated, kindly drop them in the chat room, because there is a section for questions and answer even on this call. I would like to join the DJ again to welcome each and every one of us, most especially the faculties. Thank you for creating time out of no time and from your very busy schedule to join us to share your thoughts and experience, which I know will aid businesses not just in 2024, but beyond 2024. So I'd like to yield the floor to the very first presenter or faculty, Mr. Folorunsho. Mr. Albert Folorunsho, please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator. I also want to thank the DG for being with us at this presentation, the very first one of the year. I also want to say that maybe I will be the first person to pick up a form after these presentations to join the, I thought it was mainly for manufacturing entities and all that, but from what has been said, I think is a very good association that wants to be part. And I also want to thank the NECA for what they have been doing, particularly the advocacy, and probably to also challenge them before I start, particularly as it relates to advocacy with the National Assembly. Because when I see list of authorities, you don't see National Assembly, but they are the ones that are the most notorious, as far as I'm concerned for now. And I hope NECA will help take them on so that they can focus on their main role as lawmakers. On this note, I want to say thank you for inviting me once again. Can I share my slide now?
Yes, please. You are a co-host. You can share, sir.
Thank you. Okay, I hope you can see my slide now.
Yes, sir. We can see the slide, sir.
Okay. So, of course, the DG has virtually taken most of the things we are going to be discussing, and that was a very good background. So, by way of to do justice to this paper, we'll be looking at the scope of regulatory compliance in Nigeria. I'm sure we are all very familiar with that scope. The regulatory authorities are endless, those named and the ones that are unnamed. The regulatory compliance in taxation, which seems to be the most critical, but some may even be more important, depending on the nature of business that you are in. Regulatory compliance with corporate affairs, we just mentioned, regulatory compliance with SEC, and of course, we will mention a few industry-specific regulatory requirements, and then look at how do we manage this regulatory compliance and the consequences of not properly managing the regulatory compliance, and then we'll begin to conclude. But by way of introduction, it is very clear now that evolving global businesses, have to take regulatory compliance seriously. And one of the major things for companies is that companies want to ensure that they sustain their growth. But if regulatory compliance is not well taken into consideration, it can be a major setback, for companies that are pursuing their sustainability. And therefore, managing regulatory compliance will play a critical role, even as we pursue sustainability in the year 2024 that is just unfolding. So therefore, both locally and internationally, effective management of regulatory compliance will play major role for any company that want to thrive in this very competitive environment. So, so why do we need regulatory compliance? Apart from the fact that you want your business to be sustained, there are some that are very straightforward, which we are familiar with. It is a civic responsibility for a good corporate citizen to comply with regulation, and of course, to safeguard the company's reputation. A lot of companies are sealed up, indiscriminately. Particularly, I see banks as the whipping child of most authorities, and because of the big hold they have on them, and the fact that their reputation is critical to their sustainability, they are easily, terrorized by those authorities. And so, if you want to safeguard your reputation, it is a thing that you must take into you must take serious steps to ensure that you are complying. Of course, safeguard the companies from legal risk, protect the company from unnecessary business disruptions, which most of us on the call are familiar with, safeguard from incurring unnecessary penalty. Several companies don't want penalty to be even listed as one of their expenses, but of course, to do that, you must be top-notch when it comes to your regulatory compliance. And I have just mentioned a few of those regulatory authorities, from central bank to SEC to NDIC, Pension Commission, ITF, Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission, NOTAP, several of them. And I want to boldly include the National Assembly. If you don't know that they are one of them, they have turned themselves to one of the regulatory authorities, even when government have put in place specific commissions that are supposed to manage some of those aspects in our business world. So, of course, there are other things that are now unfolding when it comes to regulatory compliance. We can see that the environment, the ESG factors have become very critical. Environment, social, and governance. Collaboration of regulators have become something that one must take into consideration. We have the anti-money laundering, combating the financial financing of terrorism, the establishment of the Business Facilitation Act. Okay, so these are in response to growing usage of, we also have the growing usage of data. Okay, and therefore, the Nigerian Data Protection Regulatory Regulation has also been issued, which are additional authorities that we now have to take into consideration when we are considering our when we are considering managing our regulatory compliance. So, of course, the most critical for most companies is regulatory compliance in taxation. The fact that you have to register to file your return, maintain records, and then pay your taxes timely. I must say here critically that maintenance of proper record has been the bane of tax compliance. And that has been the major reason why some companies who ordinarily should not be liable to any tax keep paying additional tax because they are unable to maintain their records. Even when they are a large company, they invest so much in archive. You know, when it comes to the point where you are supposed to retrieve those documents from the archive, it becomes disappointing to the extent that you are unable to retrieve those documents from your archive. I know that data center is gradually replacing all those physical and tape archive that most of us are still holding on to. By the time you're able to, you know, move all your data into a data center, either you are able to maintain it by yourself or those that render those services, I believe that that will solve most of this problem relating to maintenance of proper record and being able to store and retrieve when necessary. And I think it's something that we need to take away. Then, of course, we have a couple of, I'll just mention a few of these areas in tax that compliance are necessary. I believe we have enough knowledge of all of this. Hydrocarbon tax payable by upstream companies, what the rate is when the payment is due and the appropriate penalty, companies income tax, value-added tax, capital gains tax, which a lot of people are falling into that trap now. People still don't know that when you dispose of shares now, where the proceed is more than 100 million within a year, okay, CGT becomes applicable, particularly where there are reorganizations that are not within related entities. That has been an area that some companies have fallen into that trap. You need to watch your relationship with such a company. When you are doing restructuring particularly, okay? Then we have the personal income tax. Lagos State is on the roll. All the states are waiting for our returns. Several tax units are very busy now putting the returns together. I mean, the employer's annual returns, which is due by 31st of this month. The withholding tax or advance payment of income tax. So it is better we call it advance payment of income tax. And I know that the tax reform and fiscal policy committee of the presidential committee is working seriously on the on withholding tax regulation, so as to make it a little bit more, you know, in tune with businesses, where a situation where companies are made to deduct tax at source that is even more than the margin that the company is making, you know, is a thing that is being considered and should be of the past very soon. The tertiary education tax, this is one major one that the National Assembly Education Committee has taken upon themselves as an authority, surprisingly, okay, to examine what has been filed in the last 10 years. And they consider themselves to the Federal Revenue Service. That is the way I can put it for now. And I think it's an area NECA will be very, you know, helpful to their members who have been terrorized by these some of these committees. I have met them one-on-one, some of them, but they seem not to just want to look at the provision of the law. Even those laws that are supposed to have been made by them and those that are executive orders, you know, we don't know exactly what the objective is. But just highlighting a few of those specific tax provisions and regulations that we need to comply with. The National Information Technology Development Levy, the Nigerian Police Trust Fund. We are hopeful that when the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform is done, some of these taxes will be subsumed in one another, and then we'll have a clear picture of the number of taxes which we can count on our fingers that companies will have to deal with on regular and yearly basis. Of course, the NASENI, the ITF, you know, the list is endless. And then you go into transfer pricing, the country-by-country returns, the common reporting standard returns. All of these are obligations that are specific to some organizations. So we also have the CAC. I believe that we are familiar with that. The new companies, for new company, no later than 18 months post-incorporation, and the penalty from 1st April 2024, as we enter into 2024 now, strict penalty per day is to be applied for failure. But of course, there is an ongoing waiver currently for filing outstanding annual return without strict penalties, ending by 31st March. I hope members will take note of this and take advantage of it. Then we have we also have notice by persons with significant control, which is also relevant to Corporate Affairs Commission, filing of changes in the company, all of which are attached with a penalty. I'm just trying to highlight a few. Like the DG said, the list is virtually endless. Then we also have some that are specific. The major one for SEC in Nigeria includes companies looking to issue securities in the Nigerian capital market must register with SEC, disclosure and reporting to ensure transparency. All of these are SEC rules that we must take into consideration as multinationals. Then for financial institutions, I believe some banks and financial institutions are also members of NECA, and they have very strict regulatory compliance requirements, including maintaining a minimum level of capital, implementation of robust risk management practices, implementation of the AML and CFT measures to prevent and detect money laundering. And that is become very critical. The KYC requirement, the avoidance of market manipulation, insider trading, all of these are specific to financial institutions. And then for oil and gas, to obtain your permit, strict health and safety issues that you need to deal with, compliance with local content requirements, the reporting and management of revenue, implementation measures, and community engagement and corporate social responsibility are some of the requirements. Then, of course, we have the real estate and the real estate companies rate, and then, of course, trust, which also requires some regulatory requirement. I mean, the necessary permits are required, availability of strict health and safety standards also applicable to them, among other requirements. So how do we go about managing regulatory compliance? And I have put together a few points which I believe we need to take into consideration, we need to take away so that we can use them to address this endless list of compliance requirements. First is you must understand the context and purpose, of that regulation. understand the purpose and the implication for each of those regulations on the business. Okay, define the regulatory landscape relevant to your industry. That is very important. And then, of course, you must do what is called health check, which is really a regular internal audit. Carry out a health check of your company as to the compliance with the critical regulatory requirement for your own entity. And then you must stay informed. You must be up to date with changes in both industry and jurisdictional regulatory landscape. You must engage with industry associations like NECA. I mean, information come out on regular basis. Just this week, FRS issued a letter saying that for digital transaction that we thought will start January 2024, that has been suspended now because the what is required for those digital non-resident entity to comply, the FRS have not put all those things in place. And so you must stay informed. Then employee training is also important. As a company, you must conduct workshops and training sessions to educate your employees on compliance requirements. I have seen companies where the employers want to be 100% compliant, but the employees that have been shadowed with this responsibility sometimes see those obligations as excessive or as if they're taking the profit of the company away. But at the end of the day, it ends up hurting the company even in a worse way. So we must educate our employees. We must periodically assess employees to ensure they understand and adhere to those compliance standards. Very critical. And some of us as entities, we don't, man those regulatory positions very well. We just thought that it's something that should be handled as part of a normal operation. No, there are things that we must set out for maybe compliance unit, even if it is going to be only one person, let somebody be there monitoring all the regulations that needed to be complied with and ensuring that the company is prompted, whenever there is lapse before even the authority gets back to the company. So periodically ensure that you review and update the regulations compliance policy, correct weaknesses, and ensure that there's alignment with the latest changes in regulatory requirements. Then I have, you must monitor and enforce where it is necessary. Establish the internal control that is necessary. Implement segregation of duties so that there will be checks and balances to ensure that all those requirements are complied with. Record keeping, which I've emphasized earlier, is key to compliance with regulation. Maintain accurate documentation to demonstrate compliance effort to regulators and auditors. I've seen FRS written a letter saying that we were not invited when the obsolete stock were destroyed. These are not provisions that are in the law. They are just things that are done by practice. And so, if you don't have that in place, something that you are not conscious about, you may just be going against the unwritten law that has become norms, in the Nigerian tax space. Again, compliance code of conduct must be set by the organization. Develop and maintain a compliance code of conduct. Okay? Foster a culture of compliance within the workplace, promoting fair and ethical practices. And I have worked with a number of companies, and I know that it is the body language of the authority of the management that determines the level of compliance. If you give it away to employees to the extent that some authorities are not critical to your business, they can be the one that will, without even your prompting, ensure that those compliance are not adhered to. So it must be something that management and top management must take as priority. Then there must be comprehensive policies and procedure. You must also develop that policy and ensure that the way you pursue your business objective of profitability, you also want to pursue compliance, because that's the only way you can be sustained. Like the DG was speaking, that those regulators could turn out to be an undertaker. And some of them, they don't care the way I see them. And some of them have not run business the way you are running it. They don't have the experience. As far as they are concerned, you just must be compliant. And sometimes, we know as business person, these things are not very easy to do. But of course, they don't care. And when you are not running, when you are sure of your monthly salary that is not dependent on the success of the business, they don't care. So it is for you to have those policies in place and ensure that your employees and every person, is familiar with the approach of the business to such regulatory obligation. So ensure accessibility and update them. That means those policies must be updated and reflect any regulatory changes that have been made. And some of these changes, we don't even get to see them if care is not taken, if somebody is not, put at a position where they prompt the organization to changes that have taken place. Now, the consequences of non-compliance with regulatory requirements. Of course, there is no transaction that you want to do now. There will be need for tax clearance certificate, so they use it against you. Inability to bid and obtain government contracts. Insurance companies, without their tax clearance, they're in trouble. Business disruption here and there, reputational damages, payment of penalties. Tax investigation could be triggered by government, and those investigations could, apart from disrupting and constituting unnecessary extra burden on the account units that relate with those regulatory authorities. They can make your business impossible sometimes, and it cannot be overemphasized. We just need to find a way to ensure you are compliant. Inability to obtain business permit and licenses are also part of the possible consequences. We have emphasized the fact that it could hurt the reputation of such organization. Okay, so these are very important things, and I think starting this at the beginning of the year is very important, and it's something that most organizations will go back and look at. So regulatory compliance and business stability should indeed be regarded as a strategic function integrated into the core of the business. Achieving this integration is also possible through development of robust compliance risk management processes that the company must put in place. We must prioritize regulatory compliance. Businesses can build trust with stakeholders. You can mitigate and foster positive reputation for yourself as an organization, and sustainability of the business practices. We align with the regulatory standard, not only benefiting the companies themselves, but also contribute to the broader economic, development and sustainability of the Nigerian nation. And of course, every day we talk about the tax to GDP ratio. I was speaking to somebody in Lagos, and to the extent that the number of persons that file their returns in a particular year is no more than 200,000 in a state that is about 20 million people. So that will definitely affect the economic development and stability of the nation. So navigating complex regulatory landscape becomes a strategic imperative for businesses looking to create lasting value and resilience in an ever-changing business environment. Understanding the legal landscape and meeting regulatory obligations are also crucial for businesses to thrive. I have told so many of my clients that, see, the best thing is just to be compliant. I mean, to be compliant at any point in time, as much as possible. Even though some have said that even when they are compliant, those authority wants to just create a loophole. You are better off if you are compliant. Business owners can navigate these complexities and contribute to the sustainable growth of the nation by adopting proactive measures. This includes stay informed about regulatory changes, as already mentioned, seek professional advice when needed, and maintain relevant record. I believe that it is not one of those difficult things to do, but it's just that it takes a toll on business. And I hope we've been able to highlight some of this, and we'll stay around for questions. Thank you so very much for listening.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your presentation. He that comes to equity must come with clean hands and ensure that those clean hands are documented. Well, yes. We'll be talking on to the next faculty who'll be sharing with us from her wealth of experience, still on this subject that is very important and key to our hearts. I'd like to yield the floor to Madam Soromia Dayo George for her session. Madam, you are a co-host and you can share your slides and navigate as you deem fit. I do believe you can do that within 20 minutes.
Lesser, can you hear me?
Lesser, I appreciate that. Thank you. I can hear you, ma.
Okay, let me see. Well, you can't see my you can't see me.
Yes, ma.
I think my camera is not enabled.
Ma'am, is it actually coming up? Cool.
Okay, but can you see my presentation?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But you can't see me though. Can you still can you see me?
Not yet, but you can still go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, okay, let me go ahead. I don't know why my camera is not enabled. I want to thank you very much for having me. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here and to be part of this very important conversation. And I would just like to also thank the previous speaker, Mr. Folawinshaw. So I think he's helped me to enable me to make my time and spend it more efficiently, because there's a lot of overlaps in what we're presenting. But what I will do is to emphasize on some of the things that he's nicely presented, and so that this becomes a workshop for many of the participants, and key takeaways that the participants can have and can actually begin to implement within their own different organizations. So just a few things that have been said. I think Mr. Pabio started by saying that this is for the sustainability of businesses in Nigeria, and that is true. Regulation, I want to first of all start by saying that regulation is actually expected to be good. So regulation is supposed to be good. It is a good thing. As consumers ourselves and members of the society, we always want to ensure that the companies we buy from work within a certain type of guideline and can be held accountable or called to order when the need arises. And I'll give you just a simple analogy before I go into sharing a few insights of mine. So, when you have traffic lights regulating the flow of human or vehicular traffic on the road, and I know that you're familiar with, pockets of places in Lagos or wherever you are in Nigeria, where you can have one traffic light or the other. Once you take that traffic light out, once you take that piece of regulation, that tool of regulation out, and the traffic lights are not there, there's a potential for chaos, and people will drive whichever way they want. So the best thing really is to have a regulated flow of traffic. And for that to happen, you have to have a tool or instrument of regulation. And the reason is because of the safety of everyone that is traveling or trafficking on that road. So, and then we have cases of self-regulation, which is good. But when there's a need for regulation, we must embrace it, but we must also ensure that that regulation is fair, it is not stifling, it is balanced, and it is ethical. I just want to say again that regulation must be fair, it must not be stifling, it must not stifle businesses out of, must not stifle organization or companies out of business. It must be balanced and it must be ethical, right? So let me just share a few insights, and let me start by again rehashing what we mean by regulatory compliance. So regulatory compliance requirements are there are laws, rules, and regulations that organizations must comply with to maintain the integrity of their operations. These regulations are often stipulated by a regulating body, such as a governmental agency or an industry association, in order to protect the general public, consumers, customers, and ensure that businesses operate at a certain standard. And I know that Mr. Folonsho has listed a lot of the regulatory agencies that we have in Nigeria: NAFDAC, SON, APCON, NCC, Central Bank of Nigeria. So there are a whole gamut of them that we have in Nigeria. The specific regulations obviously will differ from industry to industry, and it will be it's based on the industry. So what we have in food and beverage sector is different from what we have in aviation or telecoms or within the financial sector. But they always commonly include rules governing things like data privacy, financial management instruments and reporting, environmental impact, consumer protection, workplace safety, and construction. And I'm saying construction because we've seen a lot of enforcement from regulatory agencies, most especially in Lagos State, on construction issues and very much more. Um, so let me just go back a little bit. For example, businesses in the food sector must adhere to NAFDAC rules, which establish guidelines for safeguarding consumers. Organizations should also be aware of any specific requirements related to their sector if they operate at a local level across multiple states. I just wanted to bring that out, that whilst we have regulations, laws guiding our operations at the federal level, we also have a lot of regulations at the state and local government level, which we need to be aware of. So there's so many of them, but we just need to be aware of them. Because one of the things that we've frequently found out is that, an agency which a lot of businesses might not be aware of might suddenly come on, knocking on the door of your company or of your business. So you need to be aware of, one, the laws and the regulations at the federal level, the ones at the state level, and the other ones, whatever it is that is, being enforced at the local government level. Now, the regulatory landscape in Nigeria has been said by so many analysts, business analysts, that this is one of the high risk areas for doing businesses in Nigeria. And so this is why businesses must have the right kind of knowledge, capacity, skill sets to understand what is required and how to ethically navigate the regulatory terrain. And I underline ethics because sometimes we find that businesses, do run foul of this ethics. One of the things that we found out is that, oftentimes when businesses get away with these things in the short term, it comes back to bite them in the long run. So it's very important that ethics is maintained when dealing with regulatory agencies. The demand for compliance, and we've heard it over and over, is increasing, and more so in the last couple of months. And I'm going to refer to what the DG said. But if you look at my slides, you will see that very dated, and this is a KPM, I pulled this from a KPMG source, very dated issues, of compliance, imposition of penalties on manufacturing companies, imposition of penalties from the NCC, imposition or suspension of some operators by Civil Aviation Authority. And the DG then mentioned that in the last couple of weeks, what we've seen is that we've then seen again the rise of, these penalties being wielded by regulatory agencies, running into millions and millions of dollars in penalty and fines. But again, I want to draw out something. It didn't only stop in penalties. We've also seen an increasing use of the media by regulatory agencies who then go out to make announcements of how a company or one company or the other have been, non-compliant in one way or the other. And so what that happened is that not only do companies get penalized, but they also have their reputation bashed in the pages of the newspaper. So I won't go into this slide. I think Mr. Folonshaw did a lot of justice in talking about the benefits of, regulatory compliance, but I'll come back here again. I think he also did a lot of work here, but I will want to rehash this. And again, because of something that the DG said, one of the things that he said, when member companies have issues and come to NECA, when they come to NECA and NECA is, read up to, and they begin to dig into the issue, that they sometimes find that members have actually breached the regulation and are not compliant. So it puts the trade association, it puts NECA in a very, very strange position. It's oftentimes very embarrassing because they would have stuck out their necks and beat their chest to say that, this member company of ours has brought this complaint, and why are you doing this? And let us make sure that we're doing things the right way to be able to make businesses competitive and thrive, provide jobs, attract foreign investors, and all that, But they found out that many companies oftentimes, have breached and are not in compliance. So doing business without adhering to regulatory compliance requirements can be very costly and very time consuming, because you then spend your time going back and forth, to the regulator and trying to prove that you're compliant. You start to look for documents to be able to prove, whether you're right or whether that you're on the right track and that you're doing everything that has been laid down. And you sometimes pull in project teams to be able to address the issue, sometimes get consultants. So it can be very time consuming, not only costly but also time consuming. So I want to rehash the tips and probably repeat some of the things that Mr. Folonshaw has said. The first thing that you need to do, and these are very practical tips, these are things that we do from within our organizations, things that I have personally put in places in organizations where I have worked in. One is to create a compliance program. If you're working in a multinational, this comes as just naturally. Create a compliance program. And creating an effective compliance program helps your business assess the risk, identify potential areas of non-compliance, and create processes for remedying any deficiencies that may arise. A strong compliance program makes sure that all departments understand their roles in meeting compliance requirements. And compliance is key in any organization. Compliance must be the tone from the top. It must be repeated over and over again. You must have platforms in which you're talking about issues of compliance, and it must be attached to your code of conduct, right? Code of conduct, which means that there are consequences for deliberately flouting an issue of compliance. You must educate your staff. It is important to educate staff on the roles in ensuring regulatory compliance. Training initiatives should ensure that staff understands their obligations and how non-compliance could lead to consequences for the company. It does affect the reputation. Non-compliance affects the reputation, and it affects the bottom line. And this actually presents an opportunity for collaboration with regulators. So I know that sometimes we feel that regulations will the stick, but I found out that they also are very willing to build relationships with businesses. They're also very willing to come in and help to build capacity. So you can approach your regulator and ask them to help you educate your key employees who are relating on the different issues relating to the regulatory body, and educate them on the key issues, the key things, the processes, the regulations that they need to comply with, and also clarify where there are gray areas. If there are gray areas, for instance, when I put in my approval for product packaging of A, B, C, and D, why did it take so much time? They are able to tell you maybe the way you put your request together is not the right way. Maybe you didn't tick the right box, or maybe you didn't write the right thing. So there are opportunities for collaboration with regulators. Monitor performance and adjust protocols as needed. Consistent monitoring can help ensure that your company stays in line with compliance regulations. This may include conducting internal audits or reviewing reports from external sources that track your company's performance. If any areas of non-compliance are found, appropriate adjustments should be done. And I'll just deep dive into this a little bit, just to be a little bit more practical in terms of what you need to do. So for instance, and I'll give you practical tips. So we sometimes have what we call, a compliance, a regulatory checklist. And what that means is that you map each of your departments and just go through those departments, oftentimes by your legal department, or if you have a compliance desk, a regulatory desk working together, you go into the department and you check what their processes are, what their operational model is, what their operational structures are, and what regulations guide those processes, procedures, operations, and which regulatory agency would have oversight of the things needed for them to comply. So you do that whole exercise and understand what the key requirements are for that, how do you say it, for each department. Then you can develop policies and procedures. Once you know what is required, you develop the right kind of policies and procedures to make sure that you're compliant. So it's not just to map it and leave it there, but what are the controls that you need to have in place? What are the policies that you need to have in place to make sure that those controls are being, it helps to safeguard issues of non-compliance. The other thing is regularly auditing and monitoring. A lot of us shy away from, once we hear auditors, we're very scared of auditors, but actually auditors are meant to be our friends. So there's something called a self-assessment. When you do a self-assessment, a self-audit, and what that audit helps you to do, if you do it on a periodic basis, is that you then look at where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. You're able to identify the gaps that are there and able to self-correct it. It also helps you to do what Mr. Folonsho said, where there are new regulations coming up that you're not aware of, right? It helps you to quickly make sure that you're bridging the gaps, and you constantly put in a monitoring instrument in place. Oftentimes, it's a consultant or an employee who has very close relationships with the regulatory agencies and is making sure that it's following, up to date information about new regulations and all that. This last one is very critical: record keeping. Now, in my experience, this is one of the hardest things that companies find to do: record keeping. Now, why is it important? If a regulator comes and demands for A, B, C, and D, or says that a company is not compliant, now what you need are documents, records of compliance, documentation that can help you prove your point. Now, where those documents haven't been kept well and they're missing, they have been damaged, then there's usually a problem. So there's so many consequences, and I think we've spoken about them, from penalties, loss of trade or license, privileges, legal costs associated with resolving non-compliance issues. But this is one thing that actually then keeps people like us awake at night. The damage to a company's reputation. When a company's reputation is damaged, it is oftentimes very, very hard to repair. So in closing, again, just rehashing, regulatory compliance is very essential to all businesses. You must take proactive steps to ensure that you're compliant. Very, very important. You must structure your compliance unit, structure your relationships with regulators, and make sure that you're on top of it. You're proactive. You're putting in places, key requirements, making sure that you're on top of any new regulation, looking not only at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local government level. It is one of the most critical functions in any business in Nigeria today. Companies should also focus on providing a positive customer experience and remain open to changing regulations that may affect the industry. This is very important. Building very strong relationships with the regulator, ethical relationships with the regulator. It is possible in Nigeria. I have worked with a lot of companies who deal with regulators in a very ethical manner. In fact, it is career limiting if you don't deal with regulators in a very, very strong, ethical manner. And so I would close on that note. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so very much. We do appreciate. We need to keep ourselves abreast of current trends, developments. The speed of knowledge change is almost every 6 months in the world now, if not less. I'd like to invite my chairman finance committee for his presentation. And I know he'll be sharing from his own depth of experience across several sectors over the years. Mr. Adebayo, please, you have the floor. You have been made a co-host. Kindly unmute, share your screen, and navigate as you deem fit. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. I believe you can hear me.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, NECA, for this opportunity, most especially the DG, and also I will appreciate the participants, and most especially the two speakers ahead of me, Mr. Folorenshaw and Mrs. George. Thank you for laying that foundation, which I'm going to build on. At this point, probably we'll just have to just jump in. But before then, I think I need to reemphasize the fact that when we talk about compliance, it's compliance on different perspectives, okay? Starting from regulations, which is the core. Compliance with transparency in order to more or less guide against your reputation. Compliance about requirements that might be evolving over time. Compliance around laws, compliance about standards, rules, and policies. Okay, in that light, we will be looking at it from these two perspectives. Okay, now Nigeria is currently experiencing more or less drastic changes. As you all know, Nigeria just transited to a new administration, and coupled with the fact that the administration need to take Nigeria out of the doldrum, economic-wise and otherwise. And one of the critical areas to doing that is to boost revenue, which now more or less speaks to the fact that I will be talking much more on the aspect of compliance with what more or less relates to government revenue, which is compliance with tax requirements. Okay, which means I'll be more specific to that. And as we have professionals, we then need to understand that there are great implications, which has been spelled out by the two speakers, for we not complying. And also, there's benefit in us complying. And also understanding that compliance is a cultural thing. which means if it is more or less integrated within the organizational culture, which is also aligned with the corporate objective, I think complying with regulations will not be as difficult as we pretend. But again, let me just quickly take you around various information directly or indirectly that is coming out of the revenue agencies, okay, most especially from the FIRS. As of yesterday, FIRS is promising and is more or less emphasizing that there will be more increase in tax collection, okay? They have a target to boost revenue as much as 18 trillion on behalf of the Federation, of which certain percentage goes to the federal government. Which just speaks to the fact that they aim to increase collection by 57%. And what does that signify? It signifies that you should expect more challenge coming from FIRS towards ensuring compulsorily that organizations and individuals exposed to taxes comply. And again, when you also go to FIRS website, you see things about their mandates, and everything about their mandates is about revenue collection. You also look at LRS, you look at FCTRS, all of them are saying the same thing. For those that are in Lagos states and those that are in the tax net where you file your personal income tax, these are these organizations that files a year. You find out that there have been series of notification trying to more or less call us to awareness why we need to comply with the requirement of the law. But let us now speak to what's on ground. Now, the first thing I'm going to speak to is the overview of the Nigerian fiscal landscape. Now, two things are critical within our current landscape. One is that we are exposed to complex tax regimes and administration, all because of lack of clarity in some cases, ambiguity in some of the laws, and issue of multiplicity of taxes. And all of these are things that currently the current administration is addressing through the fiscal policy and tax reforms, okay, which we believe that positive results may come out of it. But pending when the positive results come out of it, we still need to ensure compliance within these complexities. Another thing is that over time, in the last 4 years to 5, starting from 2019 Finance Act, we've experienced various changes within the tax laws. And that also speaks to some of those things I'll talk about, which was emphasized by the two speakers, that you need to get used to good development changes within the tax law. Okay, now in speaking to that fact, what then can we reiterate? Because we can't overemphasize the importance of compliance. Okay, in this case, I'm going to reemphasize 3 things about the importance of compliance. The first one is that when you comply as an organization, it stabilizes your dealing within your business environment. Therefore, you are not necessarily going to be exposed to penalty. Your reputational risk will not be of your concern, and also you don't expect disruption in your businesses. Likewise, for you that comply, okay, you are able to more or less do business within a space where investors or potential investors have confidence in you, especially when it comes to foreign direct investment, to ensure that, okay, we are dealing with those companies that complies with laws and regulations, so that there is no going to be any potential exposure that may erode the value over time. And lastly, the importance of compliance is that it enables your business to sustainably see growth and be able to live over time. It then speaks to the fact that because you need to comply, you then more or less incorporate that in your culture. You then more or less harness some tools that more or less allow you to comply, which invariably allow you to more or less survive any form of administration, any form of tax regime as they more or less change over time. Which then speaks to the fact that complying with rules, regulations, laws within the fiscal space is sine qua non. It's something that is of essence. It's something that is required. Now, when we look at it in Nigeria, even when you try to comply, you are still faced with some challenges, okay? But the critical aspect of it is that within these challenges, you must be able to demonstrate good faith towards complying with various regulations. Now, to do that, what are the key challenges we face most time around? Complex tax registration. Now, when you look at our tax regulations and we look at our tax administration itself, we more or less face with multiplicity of tax administration processes. For example, which is part of what NECA is advocating for, is that you find yourself in a situation whereby you perpetually, whether you are complying or not, you perpetually deal with tax authorities on a daily basis. For example, you see a situation where you see something like VAT monitoring, withholding tax monitoring, you see something like special audits, you see something like DEX audits, you see something like regional audits, national audits, and also of things on the same thing. The question then is, this becomes a bill, and that is what more or less probably affects some people over time, because we do hear people say that even when you comply 100%, the tax regulator or tax authority still come with some bottlenecks, and therefore, what is then the benefit for me complying, whereas they will still come with one issues or loopholes in order to generate additional revenue when such is not necessary. Okay, those are part of things that we are advocating for in the midst of ensuring compliance. Another thing is administrative body, and again, I believe that in the last administration, there were efforts by FRS leadership to more or less use technology to address those bottlenecks. And fortunately, this current administration is also enhancing it in terms of trying to simplify administrative processes with respect to tax compliance. Also, trying to harness technology so that I need not to have a direct interface with tax managers or people in the tax office before I get this done, such as issue of getting tax client certificates remotely, provided you don't have any pending issue with the tax authority. Likewise, we also have issue of inconsistency in enforcement, and most especially policy somersaults and changes which does not more or less align with a sustainable business environment. Okay, in addition to that, we look at it that, okay, of what impact does it have on businesses? And I'll look at it from majorly businesses that are much more affected with these are businesses that are not robust in nature in terms of structure or having infrastructure or capacity, most especially the SMEs. And that's why we believe that part of our advocacy is to ensure that businesses are categorized, and we are more or less simplification is such that small businesses, micro businesses, nano businesses, and medium-sized businesses are given some leverage in order to assist them to comply. And likewise, the nature of tax processes, administrations, and compliance requirements is also critical to foreign direct investment. Okay, the president has been moving around to more or less incentivize foreign direct investment. But again, one of the critical factors that they will look at, apart from return you are likely to generate from the country, is issue of bottlenecks that might be a trigger of our tax administration system, and likewise other fiscal systems that operate within Nigeria. Now, how do we address compliance challenges? It's very simple. What then is that it must start majorly from the government side or from the regulator side. Now, the more simplified the process is, the more simplified a system is and its administration, the more compliance you should expect. But when there's a complexity, when there's ambiguity, and that's why you take a loophole, or because people might misinterpret it, people might more or less find it more difficult and they just go for the easy way out, which make them not to comply in this real sense. Another thing is that transparency and consistency within our regulatory bodies and government is also critical to ensuring compliance. Again, we all understand that tax is a compulsory levy, okay, which is instituted by government of any nation. But again, when you also look at it, by the nature of compulsory levy, it's not contractual, which then speaks to the fact that I don't need to see the impact of what government is doing if I pay my tax, which means my tax must be paid regardless of what government does with the tax money. But the problem there is that in today's world, where people are more sensitized and where people have seen that in other jurisdictions where they pay taxes, you can easily feel the effect of those taxes, how it promotes good business environment, how it promotes employment, how it promotes infrastructure that equally support businesses. But in this part of the world, you don't see that. What you see much more is where you hear about embezzlement of the fund, or maladministration, or misuse, or misapplication of funds. And therefore, that is equally an incentive in one way or the other for people not to comply. But that is still not an excuse. We let's speak to the fact that government must also more or less show to businesses and citizens that is responsible enough, accountable enough, and transparent enough to voluntarily allow people to comply. And also support for every businesses, most especially the SMEs, will more or less institute higher compliance mechanism. Because, for example, why many businesses in the tax net suffer in the hands of the tax authorities, because bulk of businesses are outside the tax nets. Okay, we then speak to the fact that if the tax authority and government provide enabling environment within the administration system, I believe that more people will be in the tax net and there will be less strain on those that are already in the tax net, such that the tax authority can focus on other areas towards ensuring that they spread the tax base in order to increase revenue, rather than stressing those few people within the tax net in order to enhance their revenue. Okay, now we'll look at strategy for compliance. Okay, there are about 5 cardinal points I'm going to more or less portray towards ensuring effective compliance. The first one is the best practice in managing compliance. There are 3 things we need to do to ensure that we manage compliance. The first one is regular compliance audits. What does that mean? That is self-assessment, which means within your system, at periodic times, you check yourself to see whether you are complying with the requirement of the law and regulation in terms of assessment, in terms of documentation, in terms of filing, in terms of payments. Okay, and that speaks to the fact that you must have what we call a policy. Probably we call it a compliance policy, or we call it a standard operating practice manual, or whatever it is, in order to more or less drop a checklist so that at every point in time, people taking action within the business are conscious of all forms of regulatory consequences and implications and requirements within that space. Likewise, we must stay informed about regulatory changes. Okay, like we always say in the legal palace, that ignorance of the law is not an excuse, which means it's equally our responsibility to stay in tune with changes in tax law. And that's why sometimes they encourage that you might more or less participate in this kind of program. You more or less go routinely to regulators' websites. You more or less follow most of the regulators as they are now having social handles. You also probably have consultants, if necessary, and if affordable, to equally keep you up to date to all of those things, which means it's critical for you to be able to better manage your compliance processes. And also, as I've said earlier, which was also emphasized by the 2 earlier speakers, compliance must be incorporated within your culture, which means you must develop a compliance culture, which means it must be integral of your corporate objectives. And as you all know, that compliance tone is always set from the top, okay? And that means that most of the board and executive management of companies should much more be incentivized towards ensuring compliance for sustainability, because I do tell people that there's nothing that can be a substitute for doing the right thing, because that is what is sustainable and that is what can keep you at rest at every point in time. Another thing we also look at is effective planning. Okay, knowing the requirement is one thing. Okay, having the culture is another thing. More or less having a compliance manual is something else. But again, you still need to effectively plan. Okay, the same way you have financial planning, by way of budget and the likes. The same way we have operation plans and some other things. Similarly, we must have compliance planning as a tool towards ensuring compliance to regulations. Now, one of those things you need to do is to have a framework that is integral to your operational processes, okay, or what to do. And likewise, because there's a risk for non-compliance, and therefore you must integrate that also into your risk assessment, similarly to how you integrate financial risk and how you integrate operational risk. Okay, in this case, you also integrate reputational risk and regulation risk into your processes in order to ensure that compliance is a culture of yours. Now, to more or less make it easy for compliance, you now need to harness tools such as technology, okay? Most especially when it comes to record keeping. Now, we need to understand that there are various phases in issue of record keeping. One thing is ability to generate appropriate record or documentation at the point of transaction. One thing is to ensure that those records are adequately safeguarded and they're probably filed, whether in our archive or whatever it is. And the most important aspect of it will be in the future, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later, when something might come up and the regulator, as empowered by various regulations, might require those records, which then means that the most important aspect of record keeping is retrieval. And that is where we have more problem. All because most times we don't codify our record keeping system, and sometimes because of movements and change in personnel, certain transitions were not effectively managed. And how do we solve this in today's world is the use of technology. Today's world, we now have cloud storage system, cloud filing system, so that it makes it easy for you to retrieve at any point in time. And your record can be there in the same form as it is, even in 10 years to come. And we then speak to the fact that it is about time most organizations embrace what we call document management system, which is cloud-based. And I think it's what we need to consider, because ignorance of that, or when we consider it's expensive, we will find it that the cost of non-compliance will be more expensive than the cost of technology. And in today's world, most of these cloud-based technology have different grades, which make it possible that even small businesses can more or less leverage smaller infrastructural data management system, which can be used to safeguard against issue of documentation or record retrieval, as the case may be. Another critical thing there is that in alignment with your culture, you are dealing with people, which then means that people must more or less be exposed to the requirement of the regulation. People must have the capacity, and where they don't have, you have to build that capacity within or without, which then speaks to the fact that continuous training, continuous learning, and exposure of all of the staffs of an organization in different functions to various compliance requirements and of their consequences is much more critical into this world. We then speak to the fact that compliance is not limited to legal, finance, or compliance unit or internal audit, because most of activities that we more or less culminate towards compliance are done by other functional departments within the organization, which then is key for us to annex. Another thing then is that, as you all know, rightly or wrongly, that regulators in this part of the world are both necessary evil and necessary angel, depending on the side of the coin. The question then is, you can't run away from them. The closer you are to them, the better you understand the interfaces, the better you understand what their demands are, and the better for you to prepare against future occurrence. We then speak to the fact that you need to keep abreast open dialogue with your regulators so that you can know the expectations and try to manage the expectation at every point in time. And in that case, you will much more be closer to compliance principle than not. And equally, similar to what NECA is doing, you also involve actively in advocacy, especially when it comes to policy formulation. And that's why you find out that the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee headed by Kawi Dele, more or less had various sessions for different categories within the business environment in order to get more facts. And that speaks to the fact that we should be able to come forward with more or less suggestions, concerns, such that in policy formulation, all of these are taken into considerations. Okay, now let me just briefly look at a case study or two on how some institutions in Nigeria are more or less taking compliance so seriously. Now, you look at a situation of a Nigerian leading financial institution, and what they did in order to ensure compliance is, one, they implemented advanced compliance software, okay, which is a software that keep track, keep monitoring, and also serve as a document repository in order to ensure that they comply with the requirements of regulations. Okay, another one is that they regularly more or less train their staff, and also they make it a culture towards engaging regulatory body to have advance notice of what is required in order to ensure that they don't breach any regulation as the case may be. For example, to institute compliance, for example, for tax authorities, if you have a challenge in interpreting a transaction, similar to other jurisdictions abroad where you have what we call advanced tax ruling, you can equally more or less seek guidance of the regulator to say, this is a transaction in which probably is not common or is a structural one. This is our view. What is your view from the past consequence of it or the requirement? And therefore, you can be able to more or less beforehand have some leverages towards ensuring that you and the tax authority are on the same page, rather than define the evil day to a period where they come for audit and have an argument, which can lead to a loss of funds to the organization. Another key aspect is a prominent manufacturing company. What they try to do is that they cultivated a strong compliance culture, which is a language from the top to the bottom. Another thing they did was to leverage technology by way of data analytics to ensure that from the checklist and from ticking of the boxes, they're able to carry out analytics to know the level of compliance. And another thing they've also done most effectively is collaboration with the regulatory authority and also collaboration with industry partners such as NECA and the likes in order to get guidance towards ensuring that at every point in time, they get abreast of what is required. Now, what is the lesson learned from best practices? One thing is that we have to be proactive in compliance, which means proactive approach guaranteeing compliance much more. Also, the use of technology and training is critical to compliance. And thirdly, open communication with tax authority and also doing peer reviews is also critical in ensuring that an organization complies with the requirements of the law and regulations. Now, this speaks to government now. In the midst of trying to ensure that companies comply, as we promote today, also we are making some recommendations to the government for them to also consider, which means first recommendation, which is being taken into consideration currently by the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, is that we are advocating for simplified regulation. And that speaks to the fact of harmonizing taxes and also simplifying it. One of those areas that they have agreed to simplify is the issue of withholding tax, so that all of those negativities around these administrations are removed. Another one is issue of government also being transparent within the tax administration and the use of the fund. That will equally encourage voluntary compliance. And also issue of avoiding policy somersault, which means government need to be consistent in its policy formulation. And such policies must be friendly with business environment. Now, another aspect of it is, how do we enhance regulatory framework? One thing is that government also needs to remove red tapes, the bureaucracies within its operational system, which then means that let them streamline regulatory processes. Most especially, let it be digitized so that there will be little interactions with people in public authorities, similar to what we see today in the UAE, most especially in Dubai. Also, we have to regularly have stakeholders consultations, which means with bodies like NECA and the like, stakeholders consultation is always faster rather than company consultation directly with the authorities. Because when you go as an association, you get more audience and you have more vocal point and more wider consultation than going alone. And also, what role does government-private sector collaboration entails, which means it's compulsory for government to collaborate with businesses. Also, we advocate currently that there should be incentives for companies that comply over time, which means government should more or less put up a framework that incentivizes companies that have demonstrated compliance over some period of time. And this will encourage others to also comply. And another thing is that where practicable, there can be partnership between government and the private sector to have a robust cloud system that will more or less reduce the cost and simplify compliance by way of providing compliance solutions through technology in today's world. And more or less, lastly, I think I'll just more or less summarize our takeaways. Now, the takeaway from this presentation border on the fact that strategic compliance framework is required, capacity building and continuous learning is required, technological advancement is required to ensure compliance and sustainability of such effect, cultural adaptation and organizational change is essential, policy advocacy and government collaboration is essential, incentivizing compliance-focused business strategy, which means give incentive for people or companies that are complying in order to encourage others, and proactively approach and open communication. These are issues that we need to take away as organizations and as public authorities or regulatory authorities in ensuring that we both collectively put our houses in order to ensure compliance for the better growth of the economy and for business sustainability. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Mr. Chair, we appreciate you. We thank you so very much. So on behalf of all the participants, the DJ and colleagues at the Secretariat would like to appreciate every member of faculty that have shared their thoughts with us one way or the other. I kind of like the last few points that Mr. Adebayo alluded to, that we are not against regulation. Regulation must be fair, must be in line with the laws of the land, must not choke businesses out of existence, and where possible and as much as practicable, it should be simplified. We'll move to the very next session, which is the questions and answers. What we had earlier, your questions, comments in the chat room. We will read it out and direct it to any of the faculties for their attention. We've received only one, and this was at about 1:20 p.m. 1:20 p.m. One Titi Akerele asked a question, and I believe this should be directed to Madam George. It says, shouldn't creating the compliance program be the role of the legal and or compliance officer? In other words, who should create the compliance program? So while I'm directing the question to Madam George, we'll look again into the chat room to see other questions, if any. Madam George, please. Hello, Madam. Sorry, Mr. George. She's muted. We're still waiting for other questions, if any. Thank you for all the applause. Now we have another one. How exactly do you ensure ethical compliance? One of the speakers stated it severally. Mr. Adebayo.
Okay, thank you very much. As I've said earlier, I've said there's no substitute to doing the right thing. And I think the two speakers also emphasized it because, for example, not doing the right thing, no matter the influence you have, you might still be called upon after a change in administration or after a change in leadership of that institute to more or less come and answer another question. Which then means that at the end of the day, by the time you are more or less called upon severally, you now see that what you believe to be the benefit of not complying might have been eroded. We then speak to the fact that in whatever you do, ethical practices are better. Sometimes, you know, it might look as if there's an incentive for you not to comply, but when you look at it in the long run, it's better and there's no substitute for non-compliance. Okay, we then speak to the fact that rather, let us make it a culture. And that's why we emphasize that don't make it a rule. Make it something that is imbibed as part of what is your business ethics or core value, as the case may be. Which means do the right thing at every point in time so that you are at peace, you are at rest. And you can equally challenge the regulatory authorities to any extent. For example, within NECA, at every point in time, we have taken upon a course of companies, okay, whether industry-related issue or company-specific issue to the highest level, okay? We can be able to do that only when even the company has demonstrated objectivity, compliance to some degree. Do you understand? And in that case, you can fight it with all legal means and some other advocacy tools. We then speak to the fact that there is nothing that you can use as a surrogate from more or less imbibing compliance in an ethical manner. Make it what you chew on a daily basis. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Folorunso, there's a question here for you, which I'll be directing, and it is, who is responsible for ensuring regulatory compliance in an organization between the first line of defense and the second line of defense? We had that from NECA at about 2 p.m. Mr. Folorunso, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, the question again.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir. Who is responsible for ensuring regulatory compliance in an organization between the first line of defense and the second line?
So regulatory compliance should be included as part of the policy objective of the company. And for me, it is the first line, which means it is the management that should be responsible. And it is what the management, how the management plays regulatory compliance that the other staff will follow. I've always told the tax authority most times that, see, I have not had any information around a management meeting to say that we are not going to be compliant with auditor's deduction. And so what we're going to do is that we'll be keeping part of it. It doesn't happen. I don't believe that that will happen. But if it does happen, that is what the other arms of the organization will follow. So I believe that it is what the management laid down in terms of policy regarding regulatory compliance that will cascade down the other levels of the organization.
So will it be correct to say that a junior staff can be a compliance officer from your point of view, sir?
Yeah, anybody can be a compliance officer, but you are implementing a policy. So it doesn't mean that you need a GM to be a compliance officer. No. It depends on the organization and depends on the nature of compliance. If you take a bank, for example, okay, you need a senior person that will be in charge of compliance because there are very critical issues that can lead to the loss of their license, that can lead to the suspension of their operation, that can lead to their reputational damage totally. And therefore, you need somebody, at that high level that will be able to pinpoint and take immediate on-spot decisions as to what to do on some of the regulatory requirements. So it depends on the organization.
Okay, okay. Now there's a question here for NECA talking about the slides. The slides will be shared, please, as long as you had registered and provided us with your details. And there's a question here, say, at what stage do we escalate issues of our bearing regulators to NECA and through what channel? Then my colleague NECA, during our presentation on who we are, had earlier shared our contact details, and it will be recirculated again. Please take notes so that you could do that. But like we said, we render services to our members. So when you come, we find out, are you a member? Thereafter, we'll now look at other covering issues, as what are the issues, certain engagements will be done with you. So I will now know where to take it up. Jumai asked a question at about 2:02 p.m. Good afternoon, speakers. Is it possible to have a list of regulatory statutory bodies per industry as per construction, real estate, engineering? What kind of stakeholders list of bodies as kind of like a stakeholders list as they relate to respective industries? Mr. Adebayo, I don't know if you want to say something to that.
Okay, okay. The first thing is that you need to understand that from NECA perspective, NECA deals with all employers, regardless of the industry you belong. Okay. Also, we have other industry-specific bodies who are also affiliates of NECA. Okay, in which they speak to industry. For example, you have MAN that deals with manufacturers, and you have the other ones that more or less are specific, probably the textile industry, the hotel, and the recreational facility industries, and some other things like that. We just speak to the fact that when something is industry-based, NECA, in conjunction with the primary association of that industry, collectively more or less address the issue. Okay, and that's what it is for now. And that's why you find out that most of all of these associations are equally associated with NECA, as the case may be. And one thing then is that, as you have said, we encourage all employers, that is all companies, both small, medium, and the large ones, to register so that you can more or less have more platform for continuous learning, continuous exposure to all of these regulations, and also you have more protections, provided you are able to fairly do your own part. Okay, and that's why you find that we have more voice within the government space. Okay, all because we to encourage our members to do the right thing. Okay, that's just, but there are a lot of regulations in place, and I think within NECA also, we have a compendium of likely regulations and the requirement of those regulations in a document. Okay, but the only thing I can say for now is that probably do we have the soft version, but I know we have the hard version, which then speak to the fact that if you become a member, probably you have more access to that repository, and that's just it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Folorenshaw, I have another question for you, please, if you don't mind. In your presentation, you had shared with us some taxes and levies under the tax laws in Nigeria. And you have also shared with us some regulatory bodies. Now, in your own view and with your years of experience, can an organization be fully compliant with all regulatory bodies? Sir, you are muted, sir. Mr. Folorenshaw, you are muted, please.
Yeah. Okay, I just noticed that.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Very well.
Yes, it is possible to be. Yeah, the list is endless, but it is possible to be fully compliant. And from local government and all that, if you go down the lane, if you have somebody that is on top of these items, they will ensure you are compliant to the last details. Okay, so it is possible to be fully compliant. And I've worked for some companies, ordinary payee, companies struggle to be compliant. But the truth is that if the tax authority is familiar with you as a very compliant company, you are less in the focus of the authority for audit. Even though they will still come, but the mindset is already there that this is a compliant company. Okay, and again, minimal compliance or maybe reasonable compliance, sometimes in Nigeria it's enough to take you as a very compliant company because the level of compliance is still pretty very low. Therefore, if you are reasonably compliant, you can be taken as a very compliant entity, and all of the pressures, all of the continuous, they will see you as a source of both official payment and non-official. For me, I always encourage my clients, let us be as compliant as possible. And if you have that determination, you have that mindset, you have that policy, you will be better for it than just being seen as, a cookie jar for the authorities.
As a follow-up question, okay, because you're
Yes.
talking about relating with the regulatory authorities and all of that. Is it really possible that we can maintain ethical relationship with them?
It is possible. And I have diverse types of clients. Those who want ethical relationship and those who are not that compliant. And so you can categorize them into what they are. And for those who have those ethical relationships, they are the ones that their jobs are easier to do because you don't have any attachment to your relationship. And they have already known you for that. And it's always better to manage your taxes and your regulatory obligations. But if you are the one that they know is always cutting corners here and there, you will be their source every year. I've just received some letters as I'm sitting here, and I just observed that, see, these are people, I cannot be having the same liability on a yearly basis. It means that I'm not your consultant. You have to be moving. If I identify a particular loophole this year, you have to ensure that you plug it because it is not going to benefit you in any way. In addition, you'll be paying penalty. If you don't pay penalty, they'll be asking you for bribe. And you don't want to be caught within those things. So it is just better to be.
Go ahead, sir.
So for me, it is just better to be as compliant as possible. And you must be seen to be at that position, and they will take you for it.
Yeah, if I may just add to that, I think that's a very good point, Mr. Folorenshaw. When you're working for a multinational, actually, it's non-negotiable. So you have to have ethical relationships with your regulators in your dealings in any way. It's we often say that it's career limiting for you not to, toe the line of ethics. It can be hard, and that's the honest truth. But once they know you for who you are and what you stand for, then sooner or later you gain the relationship, you gain the reputation of being ethical. But I think one thing that Mr. Folorenshaw said that really then helps is making sure that all these processes that we've laid out here today, right, that you adhere to them in terms of do not be caught unawares of, not being ready and not being compliant on every issue. And it takes a lot of, rigor because we know that the compliance landscape is very, very tricky in the sense that it's multifaceted. It's probably sometimes unending, so it takes a lot of rigor and just being on top of it. But it is, I think one of the things that we need to leave this session with is just make sure that you deal with your regulators in an ethical manner.
Very important. Any more questions?
Thank
Okay,
I think he has
yeah, I think I have a question here from Dr. Adegoke. The person said, good afternoon and thanks for this insightful presentation. My question to Mr. Adebayo, one, are there specific industry or sectors that are likely to face IT regulatory scrutiny? And how can they navigate this effectively? Okay, I think generally, all companies should expect more scrutiny because government wanted to increase its revenue and from taxes, most especially, both non-tax and non-oil and oil taxes, which means that, first of all, oil and gas companies will be highly scrutinized, and
Hello,
likewise,
can you hear me?
other companies. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Okay. Can you hear me also? Okay, and that is that. And therefore, which means it's not going to be limited to one company or the other, or one industry to the other, but we should all expect that there'll be high scrutiny. And therefore, what then do we need to do, most especially, is to ensure that we stay informed, okay, look at the body language of the tax authority and the government alike. We should implement robust compliance program, engage regularly with our internal processes for audits. Once our cultural practices is compliance driven, we have nothing to fear. And again, to aid our process of compliance, let's just harness technology, as the case may be. And that speaks to that. And the second question says that how can businesses proactively adapt their compliance strategy to align with evolving regulatory standards? Okay. Again, I'll repeat, to do that, you just need to monitor regulatory changes. Also, try not to run away from regulators, get closer to them in order to more or less tap in their objectives, the expectations, and allow them to guide you sometimes so that you won't have more challenges front and back. And also invest in training and capacity building, probably you leverage technology. Also, ensure that your framework is flexible, your policy is flexible, all because tax regimes are always going to be flexible in order to address other economic issues, as the case may be, because we should not forget that tax policies or fiscal policies, these are monetary policies, are things that are regimed continuously in order to allow the government to achieve its economic and social objectives, as the case may be. Okay. And I think the last question there says, in your opinion, what are the most pressing regulatory challenges that business might face in the coming year? I think the issue number one on the floor is tax reform and compliance, which is what we need to expect. Another thing is foreign exchange fluctuation may also have impact on how rigorous will they pursue tax revenues. Digital regulation, FRS now is akin to more or less using technology to plug in directly into systems of companies in order to enhance taxes. These are these Lagos state governments also with respect to recreational and retail for their consumption taxes. Environmental regulation also speaks volume, which we also need to take into consideration, especially as Nigeria is signed into issue of sustainable development and issue of reduction in CO2 emission, carbon emission, and also compliance with anti-corruption laws and some other things. These are just my view for now. Okay, over to you, Mr. Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. If you have any other question, please do post it. We'll get it back to you. We already stated our emails, but please note you can still reach us on NECA@neca.org.ng. NECA at neca.org.ng. With just some few information for us, I'd like to invite my colleague Isabella to just please speak to it in terms of one or two announcements before we wrap up. Isabella, you have the floor. Kindly unmute, share your screen. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Good afternoon, everyone. And also a very big thank you to all our speakers today. The session has been very, very insightful, as you can tell from the comments we have in the feedback from the comment sections. Okay, so very quickly, so here at NECA, I work at in the Learning and Development department. And so very quickly, I will just do a brief overview of what we have. So as businesses, we definitely understand how pivotal professional growth and continuous learning is remain competitive. And as some of the speakers have mentioned, for you to also remain compliant or stay compliant, you also need to up your knowledge. So throughout our journey as L&D, that's Learning and Development, we've built a robust network of dynamic, very knowledgeable and seasoned professionals. And this network comprises of very highly acclaimed professionals. We have trainers from even ILO master trainers from everywhere around the country and around. So some of the services we provide to both members and non-members. So these services are not limited to only member companies, but it would be good if you're a member of NECA because you definitely get them at reduced rates. So we have training programs. So we specialize in crafting and delivering these programs. So we have some open courses. So our training calendars are currently available and have already been distributed. So that's another benefit of being a member. So these open courses, they run all through the year. They are scheduled for different times in the calendar across the year. And then we also have customizable enterprise-based programs. So these are done as implants for the organizations. We sit with you and, develop a training program that meets the need of your organization. And this can be done both locally and internationally. And then we also design comprehensive training programs for leadership. So, so this includes both executive and board leadership, new managers. So these are things that, become very relevant, especially if you want to stay competitive. And then other services like consulting, skills assessment, identifying skill gaps, and offering planning basically for your learning and development function. So as you can see up on the screen, there's a training. So speaking on regulations or compliance, we already, I don't know how many of us are aware of the Nigerian Data Privacy Act as well as the Nigerian Data Privacy Regulation. So this training in particular is, is going to enlighten participants. So basically, participants are going to be aware of these regulations that exist rather, pertains to data, cybersecurity, and then also how to mitigate data abuse, cyber risk, and all of that so that you protect your businesses as well as avoid penalties, So ignorance is not an excuse. And then, so please, next slide. We also have another program, and this is for human resource and people analytics. So these ones I'm sharing are the ones happening in Q1. So that's from now to March. So it would be nice for you to key in. So this is also on human resources and people analytics. Very important. And then there's a major one coming up in March. That is NECA's, it's an annual program, and that is NECA annual program. That's the retreat, NECA's retreat for business managers and executives. So this is about the 13th edition, and consistently NECA has organized this with very amazing feedback. So what the retreat does is it brings, people from different industries, industry leaders, giants, and then they discuss and deliberate on very critical issues that are very pertinent to the economy, that challenge businesses, and then recommendations are made, socioeconomic challenges are discussed, analyzed, policy recommendations are made, and all of these are for business or enterprise sustainability and competitiveness. So as you can see from the flyer, these are some of our speakers, not all of them. There's Mr. Anandan, who is the MD of FMCG. We have Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, who was also mentioned earlier on today. He's the chairman of the Presidential Committee of Fiscal Policy. So there's going to be a lot that would be said and discussed at this event, at this program. Of course, the course fee and every other information on the flyer would share along with other information that we'll be sharing to participants of this event at the end of today. So do well to reach out to any member of the association, and we'll be happy to assist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabella. We just want to also inform us that of a program coming up in February, and that is the second annual Labor Adjudication and Arbitration Forum. The first one was held in Lagos. It was a huge success. We had the president of the NIC, National Industrial Court, in attendance in person. I'm talking about Honorable Justice Kaib, and we'll be having the second edition. Now, this time, we'll be looking on strengthening tripartism and social dialogue for a sustainable industrial relations system in Nigeria. We have an array of speakers, discussants, and others that will be gracing the occasion. They'll be sharing with us some years of experience. If we are going to ask each and every one of them down there, they'll have nothing less than 30 years of experience on this subject matter to share, both within and outside Nigeria, the ILO, and several other jurisdictions, which they've covered. So please do well. The date is on the 13th of February, 2024. Time is 10 a.m. and this is in Abuja. It is indeed a physical program, and then there'll be the launch of a book down there, Labor Adjudication in Nigeria. So look forward to having every one of us participate. Then I'd like just to brief us about this one is the NGCL. NGCL is NECA's Global Certification Limited. And here we provide management system certification and training in a whole lot of areas. Things like ISO 9001 in terms of quality management system and the likes. So we have displayed here the various programs coming up, training programs from March, April, June, down to November. Please do reach out to the Secretariat for more information, and do well to also be involved in this particular training. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. May I also inform us that in the course of the year, we'll be having the Nigerian Employer Summit 2024, and the theme is Quest for Economic Transformation, and it will be taking place in Abuja. Details will be coming up shortly, and it will be circulated to everybody, but do well to know that we've penciled it down for the month of June, 24th and 25th June 2024 at Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja. And towards the end of the year in November, we have our usual program, the NECA Excellence Award, and that will be taking place in the month of November 2024. I'd like to pause because we've taken quite a lot of time. Let me invite my DG for his closing remarks. Mr. DG, sir.
Thank you, Thompson. And let me say thank you also to the 328 participants that are still with us. I think we clocked about 600 at the point. Probably some dropped off because of work issues. But the reality of it is, for us, the reality is this. It takes, as the speakers have mentioned, it takes just one infraction before the business will realize we realize how deep or how harsh this issue of regulation and regulators can be. Just one infraction, just one oversight, and a regulator will leverage on that to put the business under a lot of pressure. And that's why we consistently affirm that for meetings, either meetings at the secretarial level, whether the things that we post on the different committee platforms, it's very important that our members continue to focus and look at those information that we share, because those information might save them a lot of stress. Let me thank our speakers. We really want to appreciate your commitment and your support to the association and also to the growth of organized businesses as it were. We are not taking your time for granted at all. We are not taking your time for granted. Mr. Rabdayo, thank you very much. Chairman Finance, thank you very much. And our guest speaker, Mr. Albert, thank you very much. We'll follow up with the form, with your form. And my colleagues will follow up. And it's nice that you've decided to join us as well. To every other person that have joined, those that are not members, please kindly share, kindly contact the Secretariat for information on how you can become a member. It can be your business saving grace in 2024 and beyond. And my colleagues that have also pulled this together, those behind the scene, pulling the strings and ensuring that we remain online. Thank you to all of us. We might be running, a more deepened conversation on regulators and on regulatory compliance. I think we'll be holding in March during the retreat for business managers that will be holding in Djibouti. I believe my colleague will have mentioned it. So for many of us that miss this, or you find this very important and very useful, and we'll be having the more expansive and a panel discussing this issue in a deeper context of HR, context of finance, context of corporate communications, misinformation and disinformation, context of ethics, and so many other contexts that we'll be seeing. And because we'll be having Mr. Taiwo Idile also coming in, it will make the conversation at the retreat much more enlightening and enriching. So thank you once again. We look forward to welcoming those that are not NECA members. And for those that are NECA members, we look forward to a deepened engagement with the Secretariat in 2024. Thank you once again, and we wish all of you a pleasant afternoon, and Happy New Year to as many persons as we have not wished Happy New Year officially. Thank you very much. Thompson, I hand over back to you as it goes.
Thank you, Mr. DJ. Thank you, my DJ. On that note, I want to say thank you again to everybody for sparing time to be with us. Let me appreciate my council members. Madam Victoria, we salute you. Oga Adebayo, we salute you. Thank you, everybody. And Oga Uche, we also salute you. Thank you so very much for being, that's Uche Uweche. Thank you for being part of this session. We did promise that this slides presentation will be shared. We look forward to receiving shortly, alongside with other information on our training programs and other programs for the year. We've indicated our emails on the chat component. So you want to reach us, neca@neca.org.ng, neca@neca.org.ng. We equally have yemisi@neca.org.ng. We have Isabella@neca.org.ng. We have Thompson@neca.org.ng. We have Olushola@neca.org.ng, Adenike@neca.org.ng. So please, you could reach us on any issue, on any question that you do have. Thank you so very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Cheers. Bye.